There's a story about the second Rebbe of Chabad, the Middle Rebbe. Middle Rebbe passed away at the age of 54. He was released from prison on the 10th day of Kislev. um, Kislev. This was like in, what is it, 1820 something, 27, 26. He was released from prison. And the next year, he wanted to make a big celebration. The year after he got released from prison, he was put into prison because of opposition to his teachings. That's what the end of was. We got so he wanted to make a big celebration. Before that, he went to the grave of his father to pray. But coming back from the grave of his father, he became sick. He became ill, and he fell ill in a city called Niezhin, and he became progressively more and more ill until he started losing consciousness, and the doctors realized there wasn't anything to do. They tried all sorts of manipulations and things, shots to bring him back. And so finally he fell into a very deep coma, and suddenly he woke up. He said, I'm going to say Chassidut. I'm going to say Chassidut, teachings of Chassidut. He said that if you cut him, Chassidut would come from his veins. Teachings of Chassidut. Chassidut is like what we learn first thing in the morning, right? The first class. So he said, all right, now I'm going to tell you secrets that you've never heard before. He started to speak, and someone leaned over, and their hat fell off on him, and it disturbed him. So he said, it seems that from heaven, I've been prevented. He lost the train of thought. So he said, but I do want to say something. And he said, in the end, he went back and he did say a discourse on Chassidut, but he said he wants to say something. What did he say? That he was greatly pained that the Tsar's government was taking religious boys into the army to fight, because the Russian army was like the worst in the world, and it was, very slim chances that you would come back whole from the army. And even if they did, the Jews that went into the army, it was even slimmer chances they would come back still observant, because they didn't give them time to pray, and it was very anti-Semitic over there. So you couldn't, you had to hide all your Judaism. So he said he was very pained that they were taking Jewish boys from the yeshivas and putting them into the army. He said, but he wants to explain the reason why. And the reason why is because the Jews, even the young boys, whatever, the Jews weren't properly valuing the commandments. They weren't treating the commandments with the proper excitement and value and love and preciousness of the commandments. They were doing it because they just got used to doing it. So what did God do? God made it that the government would fall into their minds ideas. Let's take the young religious boys and put them into the army. And in the army, it's impossible to put on tefillin. It's impossible. But these boys, whenever they did have a chance to put on tefillin, in the few minutes or the few hours or whatever that they had, that they would put on tefillin with a tremendous desire, a tremendous longing, and a tremendous, how do you say, joy in being able to do the commandment. And like a person being saved from life, he's underwater, he comes up, he takes a breath, that'll be doing the commandments the way that they're supposed to be done. And that value that they have for the commandments, that excitement that they get from being released from situations where it's impossible to do the commandments, and being able suddenly to do that, the value that they'll have for the commandments, that few minutes, that saves all the Jewish people. Because even if one person does a commandment with the proper respect and the proper value, that it's supposed to be given, then that makes a positive effect for all the Jewish people. So that's the reason. That's the reason that God has given into the minds of the Russian government to take these young boys into the army. So that should be a lesson to us that when we do the commandments, that we should do them with the proper, give them the excitement that they deserve. Treat them as big miracles, that we have the actual opportunity to do what God wants. That's the biggest blessing of all. As we'll talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. See you all tomorrow at 8:15. Thank you for coming.